of all, thank you very, very, very much for joining us. It's 4 p.m. on the last day, so I know my brain is tired, and I hope everyone is still awake enough for the discussion, and we hope to enliven you if you're not. Let me start with some quick framing, and then I'd love to introduce our very distinguished panelists. First of all, I'm Rachel Brooks. I'm head of Curriculum Development for Sustainability and Responsibility, and Program Director of our new Bachelor Certificate in Sustainability Management here at the University of St.Gallen. I'm also a lecturer, so it's a topic extremely close to my heart. And I've also done a lot of leadership development in the past in the area of sustainability, so I've seen really firsthand with numerous companies across industries how challenging this is, realizing this kind of change. But I think we start the conversation today by saying that, what we've been saying for the past 2 days, that we're living in a time of completely unprecedented global uncertainty. And that in the midst of political and economic concerns, the green transition, as we'll call it, is facing immense pushback from both business and government. And that even in spaces where there's not an outright attack, as it's called in the title, the tone has shifted. And maybe we can't put our finger on it, but it feels like something has changed in the discussion. The sentiment has changed. But what hasn't changed is that many, many experts still agree that climate change, and this is connected to a myriad of other global grand challenges, is the biggest risk that humanity faces today. So this has not changed. Some of us have decided that the trend is over, but this has not changed. And in an increasingly multipolar world, we've heard a lot about this, the pushback towards the green transition is also one narrative, and it's not unanimous. And the prevailing uncertainty and the daily reality that we're facing of unpredictability at a global scale signals something interesting, and that's that our established systems that we've trusted and relied on for many, many years, by the way, not forever, are under strain, and some of them are outright faltering. So for me, this signals an opportunity as well to address the tensions in this conversation. One of which is it over now? Are we done with this? Is this topic now done? Or is this going to enter into a new and more dynamic phase? What might be our collective vision for the future, actually? And what might be new pathways for action in this context? And it's in this spirit that I'm thrilled to have these panelists here today to talk about what role should business take in this next phase? What difficult decisions do leaders need to make? How can we make way for a plurality of perspectives? A plurality of perspectives in an emerging future? It was brought up right at the beginning of the symposium that there is some legacy thinking that is preventing us from allowing the future to emerge. So how can we reconstruct and re-empower this green transition as a collective and an inclusive movement in this context? And joined here today by Marinel Ubaldo. Marinel is a climate activist who co-organized the first youth climate strike in the Philippines. She's led advocacy for climate action and corporate responsibility and protection of human rights, among many other accomplishments and engagements. I could spend quite a while talking about them. And I'm also joined by André Hoffmann, who is the vice chairman of the board of Roche and chairperson of the supervisory board of Capitals Coalition. He's engaged in several organizations and boards, including as a member of the Club of Rome, and he also served as international vice president of the WWF from 2007 to 2017. And Miljan Gutovic, who is the CEO of Holcim. And he previously led Holcim's operational excellence organization while the region head of Europe, in which he realized significant profitable and sustainable growth. And prior to that, you also worked at Sika. So Thank you very much. I really look forward to exchanging with you. We're skipping opening statements to get right to the problem, and I've shared how I make sense of this moment we're in. But let's really get at the problem from your perspectives. How have each of you really experienced this shift around the green transition and how we're talking about it? What has tangibly changed for you in your work and in your roles? And I want to start by going to you, Miljan. Where are we in business right now with regard to this?
First of all, pleasure to be here, and thank you all for joining us today. Extremely important subject, sustainability today, and couldn't agree more with what you've said earlier. This whole global shift towards more environmentally friendly practices is at a critical moment in time. And we are seeing businesses scaling down on sustainability initiatives, or at least rethinking climate agenda. This is a bad news, and this is driven by political volatility. I mean, across the world, we are seeing governments are backing down on climate agenda, even in US. And in some instances, ESG principles are under attack. At the same time, businesses are facing enormous economical pressure, inflation, slow growth rates, competition, and the list goes on and on. But, as I said, this is a bad news. But the good news is that businesses still see long-term financial benefits when investing in sustainability. And despite what is happening in the world, businesses, at least the businesses that I am dealing with, that I am partnering, are not only continue to invest in sustainability, but they are scaling up, they are investing more, and they are confident that the payback will be attractive in the future.
Thank you. And I want to come back to this. But first, André.
Do you want me to tackle the same question?
Similarly, but what I want to get a little bit more from, given your background, is go into sustainability, climate, biodiversity. Where are we there? Can you set the stage for us a little bit? What are the threats here?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. And at the same time, you spoke about the pluralities of view. I'm afraid in this panel you will find people who are well aware that there is an emergency and that something needs to happen. I don't think there's somebody who will be contradicting on the panel that we need to understand that planetary limits are not only reached, but are breached in a number of places. Now, I was a student here. Too long ago for me to mention the date, but at the time, the idea that we would be able to fill a room like this with people who are going to talk about the limits to growth, literally, and I'm quoting the Club of Rome by saying that, would be unthinkable. You know, the fact that suddenly we are all coming back and realizing that there is a problem is I think, a great positive. What we were taught at the time, and what I went on to study at another business school, was this notion of, the business of business is business. We have enterprises which are there because they are going to create prosperity. And they're going to create prosperity that will be shared by the population and which will bring peace and long-term thinking. You know, very much the social contract form after the war. And what happened is that that system has worked. You know, we need to be absolutely clear about this. Until the year 2000, 2005, we had practically a continuous growth everywhere. When I was born, there were about 3 billion people on the planet, a bit more, 3.2. There are now 8. The 8 billion people that lived in 2005 lived better lives, longer lives, healthier lives than the 3 billion did at the time. So the model to create prosperity was good. It worked. But it is flawed. It is flawed, and we see more and more of these questions, of these symptoms that the system has cracks, and that these cracks are getting bigger and bigger. Now, there are a couple of people across the Atlantic who think that you can legislate the whole climate crisis by writing an executive order, but we all know that that is not true. You know, there is a need to act. There's a need to an urgency, and you very helpfully mentioned biodiversity in the question. This is not just a question of climate. We're not just measuring CO2 levels. We're actually seeing that the planetary limits are being breached. And when you look at the planet, we don't look just at nature. We don't look just at biodiversity. We don't look just at climate. We look also at social and at human capital. The symptoms that shows that the system is inadequate are visible first and foremost in the social capital. Inequalities, differences in behavior, anxiety, unhappiness among the youth. I'm sure we will be able to talk about this later. Human in each one of us, human capital. How do we arrive to a moment where we can actually contribute positively to humanity? It's getting more and more difficult. And all these things together, so you mentioned in the introduction that I'm the chair of the Capitals Coalition. We try to bring about a way of measuring the impact that we as humanity have on the planet in terms of social, human and natural capital, and understand the interdependencies of these three to get to the value that you measure, the financial capital. In there, you can see more and more of issues about the future, this idea of going into a long-term thinking out of the short term. If we want to increase the resilience of the system, we need to move towards equilibrium. Equilibrium is sustainable only if it doesn't abuse one of the three capitals. And I'm sure we will be able to talk a bit more about this later on. But if we look at just what science is telling us, the situation is not good. And we need to sort of remember that we are in a system which at the moment is overreaching itself in a very dramatic way. Switzerland has reached 2 days ago the Earth Day, the moment where we start eating the capital rather than just living from the interest. I used to chair an organization called the Footprint Network, where we measure the impact of humanity on the planet expressed in terms of acreage, in terms of surface. If you really want to continue to live on the same standard as we are now, we are going to need another planet very soon. Switzerland consumes about 2.5 planets a year. India much less, but of course India is very keen to come and join us, and which is a perfectly legitimate way of looking at it. So if you want to go towards a sustainable prosperity, we're going to have to change a lot of things. Now, all this is difficult to quantify, and I suppose your question was a little bit about numbers as well, but we all know that it's true.
Thank you. And let's definitely pick this up again later. Marinel, you've lived through a super typhoon. How do you feel knowing that the green transition is over?
Thank you. And I'm not a business person, just to say that. I'm a climate activist, and thank you so much for having me as we are gathered here to explore the ways forward for business as there is a mounting pressure on the green transition. And I want to begin with a hard truth. There is no business on a dying planet. And I want to say that one last time. There is no stable economy on a dying planet. And climate crisis is not an abstract future threat. And I am an evidence to that because I have survived a super typhoon Haiyan, debatably the strongest typhoon ever recorded in human history, that made landfall in 2013 in our area in the Philippines in Eastern Summer. I've lost people in my life. I have lost friends and relatives. And up until now, I couldn't say that I've actually survived. I've actually moved on from the trauma because up until now, I felt like the purpose of my life is to really speak up because we're not here to speak up about their truth anymore. So really, climate crisis is not an abstract future threat anymore. It has been happening. It is killing a lot of people in vulnerable nations, including my own in my own island in the Philippines. And not just that, it is also disrupting supply chain. It is also damaging infrastructure. It is also displacing communities. Yet there are still businesses who are continuing to profit from the losses and the damages of the vulnerable communities who are least responsible for this crisis, but are most affected, and it has to stop. And even with the uncertain political landscape in major economies, if businesses are truly serious about their climate initiatives, it should not matter who is in power, because climate action should not be hostaged on election cycles and political political rhetoric, because I feel like businesses should lead and not follow. And for me, the only way forward is to really through a green transition, and that is rooted in renewable energy, in circular economies, and dignified green jobs, where businesses must move beyond treating sustainability as a corporate social responsibility or philanthropy, because this is not charity. This is a true development, and there is no true development if the entire nations and communities elsewhere are being left behind. Yeah.
No, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. I actually had a different direction to go, but I think that's the perfect segue into another, I would say, challenging topic. And so I think I ask these questions in a non-confrontational way, but I feel the need to ask them. So Roche recently moved away from its diversity, equity, and inclusion commitments. And I guess what I'm asking is, what was the rationale behind this, and what do you think that the systemic effects of a company like Roche making that decision?
I'm very glad that you asked this question, because it shows that the efforts we have made to satisfy the demand of the US administration have at least convinced one person. That's already a good start. The idea that we as a company desist from diversity is absolutely ridiculous. We employ 100,000 people, more 4,000 people in 120 countries. We are diverse. So the idea of saying that diversity is something that needs to be regulated is ridiculous. It's a business decision. We are not here to try to do it by conviction. We do it because if we don't foster a certain amount of diversity in our company, we will be less performing, we will be less good, we will be less successful at creating new solutions for patients. Our job is to serve the patient. The purpose of our company is to do today what the patient is next. And if in the US the administration requires us to go through certain loopholes so that we can reach the patient, well, we will have to do it. We are not in the business of revolutionizing the country. We're in the business of serving the patient. And this amount of well-dosed pragmatism is very difficult to communicate, because of course our workforce has a right to diversity. And the idea of saying that we do not call it diversity anymore is, I think, a cosmetic exercise, but obviously it works. So I'm very glad to ask the question.
What it does is though, send a certain message. So if you're not willing to ask the question and listen to the answer, which completely makes sense, it does say something. And so how do we manage the impact that this communication, this sort of implicit communication has?
A business is about a trade-off. You need to make sure that you bring convincing arguments to every situation. It is not worth losing the opportunity of access to medicine of American patients just in order to get a point of principle. I'm not saying that our principles are for sale. What I'm saying is that our principle first and foremost is to serve the patient. And I'm not trying to send a message to anybody else but the administration. And the administration has accepted it, and so we all continue.
Yeah.
But if I say that too much in public, people think that I am sort of joking, which I am not really. Our first imperative is to satisfy our purpose, and our purpose is doing today what the patient needs next. And so if 40% of our market in the US, we have to comply.
Yep, thank you for that. And I think it really, though, is worth it to stay on this topic of the impact of regulation for a moment on the green transition. And Miljan, I have to ask you, what was the reasoning behind separating your US business from the rest of your business?
It was a strategic reason. Already a few years ago, we saw that strategic priorities between regions are diversifying. Europe, the whole narrative was about sustainable offer. Our growth, our future in Europe is driven by decarbonization and circular construction, while in US priorities were given on some other topics. So we were faced with a dilemma. How do we unleash the full next chapter of growth on both sides of Atlantic? Keeping everything together you are bringing complexity to the business. And then after studying this for more than a year, we realized that the biggest opportunity is that we separate North American business, and by doing this, the focus on the remaining Holcim will be on the key strategic priorities, and that is related to sustainable building offering, that is related to scaling up decarbonization and circularity priorities, and also providing, expanding what we call high-end building solutions to tackle the next challenges we face when it comes to energy efficiency, when it comes to the social housing, and the list goes on and on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Are there other ways to deal with this complexity as well? This complexity that the political situation lends to the business?
Well, one of the questions we faced is this going to create some dyssynergies in the businesses. For instance, when it comes to the decarbonization or sustainability initiatives, Europe is the most advanced region, not only in our industry, but probably in most of the other industries. We realized that different rules and regulations apply for different regions, states, countries, and so on. So could have we done something slightly different by creating a different financial model? Maybe, but we believe that by doing it this way, it's the best way to unleash the next chapter of growth for both companies.
Thank you. Thank you. Would you have anything to build on that?
No.
Not on the particular Holcim strategy, but different ways to deal with the complexity created by the political environment that we're thrown into.
Well, one of the things we've been exploring over the last couple of days, and in fact this morning as well, is this notion that what you need to do is to keep your moral compass. If you really want to use business as a force for good, and I am a strong advocate for this approach, you need to make sure that you satisfy the majority of the agenda by being able to do your business. We are not an NGO, we are a business. We serve the patient, and we serve the patient according to the three values we've defined: courage, integrity, and passion. And we will do that regardless of whatever administration comes up in the country. You might have noticed I'm wearing the SDG badge. The SDG is a model that was developed 20 years ago by the United Nations. It's for the Agenda 2030, for the Sustainability Development Goals. I'm afraid I have to explain that because a lot of people have not really heard of it. It's not really sufficiently publicized. Anyway, the new administration in the US has decided that it is something that is inequitous, and at the last summit of the SDG in Dubai 3 weeks ago, they voted against it, and they're trying to dismantle it. I'm afraid that's not the same value as the one I distribute, so I still wear it, although it is a loser badge, okay? We are losers, the people who are doing this, because by 2030, we will not get the whole agenda executed if we don't have the support of the majority of the population. So, does that mean I stop? No. So how do you deal with complexity? By staying true to yourself.
Yep, thank you. Marinel, what does this bring up for you?
I love what you said, because I feel like I'm always on the climate justice and environmental justice side. I appreciate those businesses who are actually facing this, even just talking about climate action, environmental action, because it's hard trying to make a profit and also thinking about the environment at the same time. And I still feel that we need to hold the transnational companies accountable, not with voluntary pledges, but with transparency and regulation, because I feel like climate action must be baked into the core business strategy and not just as an ESG checkbox. But it should be as a foundation for a long-term survival and value. And I think some of the businesses, that's actually what's giving me hope, is that coming from a frontline communities, there are still businesses that are trying their best. It might be so hard, it might take a while. 2030, we might not even get there, but at least we are trying. And I agree with what you said, that whoever is in power should not matter, if we really truly believe in climate action and supporting the communities, not just through philanthropic, but actually have that genuine partnership with the community that businesses are extracting and producing or operating from, I think there is a light in the tunnel.
Have you seen a recent example of a really positive and fruitful collaboration between business and community?
There are. I would say though there are. I know that there are companies who are funding women's organization in the Philippines, so community organizations in the Philippines, and those are great. Those are developing communities where they are from. Like this business going into the community where these organizations and women champions are actually, and empowering them and giving them livelihood. Those are great. I would say that with that, businesses should also think about how to change the way the business model works as well. But because for me, it's a band-aid solution. If you're putting money in communities because you are producing a lot of emission, it's just like consolation. But at the end, it doesn't actually help us because we have to rebuild and rebuild and rebuild again. So that's making us poorer. Like my family, we didn't have any savings because in the Philippines, we have 21 typhoons per year. Half of that goes through our community. We have been saving, we have been losing our livelihood, we have been losing our homes, we've been losing people in our lives, and that is the probability of that is 21 times in a year. Like, how are you thinking about the future? How are you thinking about saving? If you're thinking about your survival, if you're thinking about what happens next month, like, am I still here? Would I still be able to see my family? Would I still be able to go to school? I was in that position in 2013. I was so bad. I was actually very fortunate to be able to go to college for Duke University to give me a good scholarship in the US. But I feel like I have those opportunities. Thank you, but those but my passion is really going back to the community and making sure we empower the community, and we give these stories, we surface these stories from the grassroots that climate change is happening, and it is affecting real lives,
Yeah.
not just in the Philippines but also in the West already.
Thank you. And this leads me actually to a question to you, which is what do you think the construction industry can do to really create social impact?
Maybe to give you an example, I just got back from Venice last night, where we have created a partnership with one of the most renowned architects, Alejandro Araventi, and his team Elementia. Latin America is a very important region for us. There is a significant housing shortage. It's estimated to be above 26 billion. And we are working together with people like Alejandro on social housing project. We want to build cheap and affordable housing, or at least give people a chance to move in and they can later on redo themselves. And at the same time, we want to do this in a sustainable way. Sustainable way means that we want to provide building materials with the lowest CO2 footprint possible, and building materials that are circular. So instead of using the natural resources, primary resources, we are recycling and reusing old materials. And we do have a few examples across the world, from Asia to Africa, where we believe that there could be a strong partnership between local governments, between corporate or businesses of different scale, to enable basic social housing for millions of people across emerging nations.
And I think I want to ask about the millions, because I think one of the things that is right now firing up the rhetoric against the green transition is this idea that it's just not economically viable and that it can't lead to growth, and that as long as we're all just sort of making donations, then what really is the future of this movement? So how do you scale this kind of project and how can it really lead to growth also for Holcim?
So over the past 5 years in my previous job and in my current job, I have tried to prove that there is a correlation between sustainability and profitability. That whatever we do at Holcim, and we say that sustainability is at the core of everything we do, but we do it because it's the right thing to do and because it makes good business sense. This is a pure accident, but we are in the building that was built using Holcim's material. If you look at these columns that and these beams, this was, when it was built, it was the latest innovation that we created in Switzerland. It was a concrete with the lowest CO2 footprint in Switzerland, and it was a concrete that contains recycled demolished materials to replace primary materials. We are selling millions of cubic meters of these products. And the catch is that these products are actually more cost competitive than the traditional products. So the whole thinking that if we invest in decarbonization, we will increase the cost, I challenge that. The more we invest and innovate when it comes to the sustainable products, we are reducing the cost of these products. So instead of selling traditional high CO2 footprint, we are replacing it with cheaper, more affordable, but more sustainable solutions. And not only in Switzerland, we are seeing this across the world. And these products are now sold in Mexico City, from Mexico City, all the way to Auckland. And we do have this capacity to consistently innovate using our production, operation, and formulation know-how. So I would expect that in the next few years, we will see the next generation of the building products with net zero footprint.
Can I perhaps
Please.
try something?
Yep.
Who among the audience would have changed their view of the building if they had known it was recycled concrete we use? We have this sort of image that only new things, virgin concrete is the one that really is a good one. Look at this. It's recycled, it gives the same, your life depends on it. If it wasn't solid, it would crash on you, and it doesn't. We wouldn't hear. So I think it's important to realize that we need a mindset shift, It's a good idea, the circular economy. Reusing is better than creating. Why? Because when we create, we extract and we pollute, and when we reuse, we regenerate. And we have reached that stage that on the planet, if we don't regenerate, we're going to run out of runway. That's a bit of a repeat, but you know what I mean. And that's something that we should be able to carry home tonight. Whenever single time you do something, make sure you realize that if you do it in a way that is repeatable, you are increasing the resilience of the system. And I think that's so important. So thank you very much to Holcim. We built a couple of buildings in Basel as well, thanks to your technology. And come and see them. They won't collapse.
Touch wood. Maybe to just add, when we talk about decarbonization, but circularity is equally important. And now I'm going to talk like an engineer. So world is building a city of New York every single month. Europe is building a city of Madrid every single month. If you do a quick calculation, by 2050, there will be not much left for the future generation to build. So it's important that we continue to reduce CO2 emissions, but it's equally important that we start aggressively scaling up circularity. Because even if we go down to net zero on CO2, without finding the solution to replace primary materials with recycled, we will be in equally better shape.
Absolutely.
And just the future is sustainable, or there is no future. Can we repeat that? The future is sustainable, or there is no future. Sorry.
And if I understood correctly, circularity has also been an engine for innovation for Holcim. Could you say that?
Yeah, true. In fact, it's Switzerland. It all started here, just a few kilometers from here. First country in the world that actually changed the building codes to allow the use of recycled material for the production of new materials. And it took us years, innovation, lobbying, discussion, endless discussions. But today, City of Zurich mandates that in public works, all the building products used must contain certain amount of recycled content. So this is the shift. So it started in Switzerland 5 years ago. Today, we have the same situation in London, in Paris, Toulouse, Hamburg, and the list goes on and on.
Yeah, thank you. André, I have to ask you,
Sure.
what do you write in your book
Yeah.
a lot about certain kinds of capital, and I would like to briefly address this and better understand it, but also with the question in mind, how do we realize it? What do leaders need to do tomorrow if we're going to get there?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for mentioning my book. It's called The New Nature of Business. It's available on Amazon and in good bookstops. And I would recommend reading it, number one. Number two, I think that for a long time, we've been, as humanity, we've been sort of focusing most of our attention in terms of resource use on profitability and on short-term profitability. What we were taught at school was if you want to be a good manager, you need to maximize short-term profit. And every time you increase shareholder value and pay a bigger dividend, you're going to be successful. The reality is that our action measured on just that very narrow financial description is not really sufficient to take proper decision. If we really want to understand the consequences of what we are doing as humans to the planet, we need to change our accounting system. We need to look at the impact we're having, and in particular the impact on the social capital, i.e. us, what unites us, what binds us, what are our rights and obligations towards each other. We need to look at the impact we're having on the human capital, and that's what you were describing before, the security as an individual. How can I really live my life to the full in the best possible condition according to my surroundings? So it's not a question of materiality only, it's also a question of self-realization. How can I as an individual contribute to the social capital as well? So the social capital, the human capital, and of course nature. But nature, not as we used to say for the panda and for the tiger. Nature because it is the life support system on Earth. If we continue destroying biodiversity, if we continue to destroy nature, we will run out of resources. And if we run out of resources, we will disappear. So it's important to understand the impact we're having on these three capitals and how they are interdependent. And this measure of interdependency should allow to measure the financial capital, which is the one we can use in the long term. Why do we need to do that? Because we need to create resilience into the system. The system, as we've demonstrated with the pandemic in particular, is not prepared for exogenous shocks. And we are going to see this growing more and more at all sorts of levels. So the idea of approaching the value creation business through the capitals approach is in order to create the stability that we need to create long-term sustainable prosperity. And that's in the book, so if you want to read it, that's a good idea.
Great, so Holcim wants to operationalize this tomorrow. What does Miljan have to do?
But they do already, don't they?
I mean, what does it really take to make it happen?
Well, it takes three things. It takes, first of all, the desire of the management to do it, and Holcim has done that in a very proactive manner. Again, I describe this in the book. This is the way a mega conglomerate which are involved in a very destructive type of activity realizes that the business model is not fit for the future and adapts to it, and adapts very successfully to it. And that's something we really, this is what business as a force for good looks like. That's a very good example. The second thing that you need is the tool to make the decisions. For that, you need a new accounting system. So if there's an accounting professor in the room, this is your moment. Your students are going to change the planet. We need to have more people understanding the impacts we just made, and there are standards being created as we speak. The IFRS, the International Financial Reporting System, has created a subdivision called the ISSB, the International Sustainability Standard Board, and they are in the process of publishing standards which will allow to measure impact on these three capitals. And then the third thing we need to do is that we need to trust business. We are not there just to destroy the planet. We are there to create the sustainable prosperity that we all need if we want to survive. So the idea of saying, we need to call out these damn businesses who are raping nature, sorry, we are in exactly the same situation as every other citizen of this planet. We need to be thinking long term. And there I must say that family business have a head forward, because we do think intergenerationally by definition.
Thank you.
So that's the three conditions I would talk about.
Yep. I want to go back to you, because there is this topic of plurality and multipolarity that's been brought up multiple times over the course of the last couple of days. And the green transition is one that it's a narrative that's been shaped largely by business and by governments from the, for lack of a better term, the global north. Last year at the symposium, I heard someone talk about the global south as the global majority, so I'd prefer to use that term. And I want to understand from you, you can't answer the question just yourself, of course, so I don't want to tokenize you, but what needs to happen for the voices of the global majority to really enter this movement, and for it to be something that is less dominated by current paradigms and something that is really representing the future that we are already, and it's just a matter of time before this becomes even more visible. I mean, what moments of allyship, for example, have you experienced that have been really affirming or have led to something? Or is something else really the lever that you see to make this happen?
Yeah, thank you so much for that. We all know, and we have already heard it, that just energy transition, green transition, should leave no one behind. What does that actually mean? That means listening and including the workers, youth, indigenous peoples, communities on the front lines, because development cannot build on exclusion. And that is a very clear reality for us. It cannot build on exclusion. And business strategies must reflect intergenerational equity and social resilience. And when we're talking about, this is actually kind of funny, because during the first day of Leaders of Tomorrow, we did a proposal for a company, for ABB, about how can their supply chain be more resilient. And we always talk about how going back to the communities where businesses are extracting, how to partner with the communities, how to actually profit share, if that's possible, with the communities where these businesses are operating and extracting their materials from. And I think when you talk about just energy transition, that is not just giving people the livelihood and then they lose that livelihood again when the business is not there anymore. It is really empowering the community and making sure that the community would thrive and would actually have developed by themselves and not because just of the business. And I'm very glad that you all are doing a lot of amazing things, but you have influence with your peers, and I challenge you to also influence them, because based on Richard Healy's The Economist research, there are just 100 corporations fueling 72% of the world's carbon emission. And 47 of them exist in the Philippines, so we sued them. We sued them for their human rights violations linked to climate impact. And yes, they are doing some philanthropic corporate social responsibility, but those are not enough. So my challenge to you from a youth perspective, from someone coming from a frontline community, we are ready and we are willing to work with the businesses. You just have to give platform for us and to have that genuine partnership with the communities, with the youth, have that intergenerational dialogue, with a genuine desire to actually learn from us and not tokenize us, and give us a platform like this. So, thank you.
Can I just quickly react to this? I mean, you are 100% right. This is not about corporate social responsibility or philanthropy. This is about nature in the business. The new nature of business is that we have to be seen as a business partner. And when I say nature, I don't mean just the physical, the biological nature. I mean us, the planet. We need to have a seat at the table speaking for the planet, and that's the social capital. How can we help the community we live in? But not by helping them, but by integrating them into the value creation process, which is what business is trying to do. So we're not, this is not sorry, I'm going to quote Indra now, who used to be the chair of Pepsi Cola. It's not how you spend the money that matters, it's how you make it. You need to make sure that you integrate all the factors into the value creation process, not repair it after, but integrate it to start with. And we're very conscious of that. But I mean, hey, we're just one company. We will talk to everybody, I promise. Read my book. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, I want to open it up to questions from the audience. Yes.
Okay, you argued that we need long-term thinking, and I agree completely. But both companies are quoted companies, and I can imagine that some of your stakeholders, specifically shareholders, have a short-term perspective. And some of them stay only for some months as investors in your company. So I try to imagine the boardroom decisions regarding both time perspectives. And most of the sustainability investments have maybe only a long-term impact. So how do you legitimize your long-term investments regarding the short-term interests of some of your stakeholders? Is it a dilemma, and how do you cope with such a dilemma? What navigates your decisions in such a dilemma situations?
So some years ago, this question was very relevant. You had profitability or the rest. And 1976, Milton Friedman, Nobel Prize, the business of business is business, only the bottom line matters. Today, when I spoke about the model of value creation, which has cracks all over, and how we cannot guarantee the prosperity, today taking a decision which does not manage the risk of the future is simply not professional. I am misusing the money of my shareholders if I'm deciding just on a short-term principle, because I need to work on resilience, I need to take on long-term, I need to invest into the future, I need to do all these things at the same time. And I think the way we do it at Roche is demonstrated by our success. As long as we can use the instruments we have to continue to serve our purpose, which is to do today what the patients need next, we are a successful business. And if that means that we have to buy renewable energy rather than oil energy, well, we will do it, because that is what the long-term business requires. So it's not just a question of conviction, it's a question of doing good and sound business. Capitalism does three things: asset allocation, risk management, and competition. Asset allocation we do on a daily basis. Where do we invest? Risk management we do on a daily basis as well. How do we make sure that once I've bought this bottle, how do I make sure that it doesn't break? But competition is the thing where we really are being pulled down, because at the moment competition is won by the lowest possible price, and that's what we need to change. And
it means probably that you risk losing a significant part of your shareholders. It's a short-term oriented one. You take this risk, obviously, or?
I would take a much bigger risk of losing their trust and confidence if my share price was going to tank because I hadn't expected a phenomenon coming somewhere else. Look at the results of the first quarter of Porsche. They had a big share shortfall because one of their suppliers could not produce what they needed, because in their procurement chain they did not check for the risk of nature. The factory was flooded by the Rhone in the Valais, and suddenly there was nothing to sell anymore. That's the sort of risk that shareholders should not have to carry. That's management. Sorry.
Thank you. Yes.
So I actually built a company that is advising organizations on impact and sustainability, and we have a team that's been doing that for 20, 30 years. And I wish a lot of the companies that we work with would actually really get what you're saying, but I find it really difficult sometimes that, especially we're trying to drive the narrative of sustainability being a business driver, and sometimes we find ourselves in the middle of a project and we realize that's not actually their agenda. But then what would you say could someone like me actually tell them to shift that narrative in a really big organization where there's politics and where there's a lot involved?
I have to just add a little bit on the previous excellent question. My shareholders and investors, they love talking about sustainability. But I can assure you number one priority is financial performance. They want me to deliver the results, otherwise I might not be employed in the long term. So we need to find a balance between these two. And I think that the catch, going back to your question now, the catch here is that you find correlation between sustainability and profitability, short, mid, long term. I spend years advocating, promoting that decarbonization and circularity initiatives in my business are driving profitable growth. And after years and years of consistently producing strong and healthy financial results, combined with excellent reduction on CO2, scaling up circularity, they have accepted this to be a profitable growth driver. Before that, we did try many other experiments, but the success of the company and the companies that will prevail and take the advantage are the ones that think long-term and are able to correlate sustainability and profitability. I'll give you when really my dream came true. We had in November 23, we had Decarbonization Day, the most difficult day in my professional life. Hundreds of people demonstrating that what we do on sustainability front will benefit our shareholders. The next day, one of the articles that was done by our analyst put the title Sustainability Rhymes with Profitability. Then I believe that Holcim stands a chance to continue to accelerate on this front, and that I strongly believe that what we do today on sustainability front will benefit us enormously in the years to come.
Yes.
Questions to two panelists. Mr. Hoffmann, I would be interested to hear from you since you mentioned accounting. What do you expect from the ESG reporting? What impact do you expect from that? And the second question would go to Marinel. Do you believe that reporting, about CO2 and so on, is impactful and effective?
So, do you want to go first, Shai? As you want.
Sorry, I was busy coughing. Can you repeat the question?
Well, I will start on. Yes, no?
Yeah.
No, you give him the mic. I think we need to make a clear distinction between reporting, which creates transparency and which gives us an indication, the same way as the financial reporting will tell us how a company is doing, an impact accounting, an ESG, if you want to call it that way, although the word is no longer so as used as before, will give us an idea. But what really matters is the decision making. It's the other side of the equation. It's the management account. It's how do we're talking about asset allocation. How do we measure that? And so what we need to PwC to do is to give us these tools. In the same way as you can give us these tools to decide on allocation of capital, let's actually do something about understanding the impact we're having when we take a decision. And that's, if I were PwC, I'd be very excited. This is a wonderful field of development. You're going to create a huge business doing that. And I think it will have a much bigger impact on society as a whole than just the reporting. But the reporting is indispensable, of course, because otherwise you don't have the thing. And in fact, that's a reply to the question of before as well. It will be much easier to explain to our shareholders why we do certain decisions if we do have the proper measurement. Your turn.
So I repeat my question, Marinel. Sorry for not being clear. There is this, the EU has come out with these reporting standards that corporates need to fulfill. They provide transparency about CO2 emission and other things. So as an activist, do you believe that these measures that corporates take to provide transparency, that they are impactful, and that they serve the purpose that you have in mind?
Thank you. Those are very helpful, I would say. But in the context of the US, the 3 is not, is some of it, like the greenhouse gases reporting, the level 3 is not actually something that they have to report. It's voluntary. And there is a lot still of emissions that are not being reported by companies. So though these reports and transparent and yeah, these reports are very important, I would say that full transparency is much more important, because like it's not just in the businesses, it is also in the nationally determined contribution of each country. And with a lot of countries who have signed the Paris Agreement, it is also imperative that while the country as a whole is having a blueprint on how to lessen the emission, that these companies are also following suit on how to lessen their own emission, so the country where they are operating could also lessen that emission. As we all know, we are not on track on the Paris Agreement, right? As we all know, we are far above of our emission. But should we just accept that? Or should we actually have a drastic change in the emission level, not just the businesses, but also the countries? But yes, the businesses too.
I want to keep this conversation going. I could sit here for another hour. However, out of respect for the time of all of you and for our panelists, we have to slowly or quickly bring it to a close. However, I want to sort of reconnect here on stage. We started this conversation talking about the green transition. Is it over? Is it not over? What do we need to do for it not to be over?
I don't think it's over. Smart companies, smart businesses will continue to invest in green transition. This will result in long-term financial benefits. They will be able to manage their risks better than the other companies. It will open the doors and opportunities to innovate and differentiate in the market. And I still believe that public, from the shareholders, customers, to the employees, they are committed to the green change. And we know that employees, companies that are committed to net zero, employees are more productive. They feel pride to work for such a companies. And long-term benefits, I still believe, are significant.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, if I can build on that, I think there are two things we need to really sort of understand. First of all, let's talk, three things. The first thing is that the green transition is nowhere finished. We need an enormous amount of work still to be done. Secondly, is that we shouldn't call it green, because it's not about nature, it's about us, it's about the planet, it's about planetary boundaries, it's about our use of the planet and how the planet reacts to our being used. It's a complex system. We have overprivileged a couple of simple variables. The complex system is coming back with collateral damages, which we are all able to measure. So we need to make sure that we understand that nature is complex and the planet is complex, and we need to deal with it on that level. And thirdly, what is absolutely crucial is that we stop thinking of this as a cost. It's an opportunity. If we build business model around bringing back, about regeneration, about giving something back to the planet, and I really mean giving something back, because you have taken far too much. It's important that we think in terms of regeneration, and there is profitability in regenerating business processes. The day we move it away from the cost and you put it to the opportunity, wow, suddenly the entrepreneurial genius that we have used so efficiently to destroy the planet could be used to reconstruct it, to rebuild it, to make it a place where we want to be. And I think that's when the green transition will be finished.
Thank you.
I actually love that it is an opportunity, because then it is an opportunity for businesses to invest in local solutions that honor innovation and indigenous knowledge. Because in the places where businesses are extracting and operating, those communities hold deep wisdom on resilience. And they deserve not just to be heard, but to be part of shaping the solution. And I feel like the path forward isn't whether we can afford a green transition. I feel like it's about whether we can survive without it. Because I'm going back to earlier when I said there is no business on a dying planet. There's certainly no stable economy on a dying planet. And I feel that the future belongs to those who lead with courage, with equity, and those that have commitment to building something better for everyone.
Thank you. There couldn't be better words to end on. So thank you, all of you, for your time, for being here. I wish we could have addressed the many more relevant questions, but thank you.